It wasn't just that one event that broke you. It was the moment you realized the life you were building could no longer exist. Something ended, but what really collapsed was the version of you who survived by adapting, not by being real. Some life events don't just hurt. They break something inside you. They arrive without warning, change the direction of your life, and leave you asking questions that have no immediate answers. Why did this happen to me? Why this loss, this betrayal, this ending? And why did it have to hurt this much? From the outside, these moments often look unnecessary, unfair, or random. But from a psychological perspective, especially through the lens of Carl Jung, these events are rarely meaningless. Jung believed that the psyche is not passive. It moves toward wholeness, even when the conscious mind resists. And sometimes, the only way that movement can happen is through disruption. Certain life events had to happen to you not because you deserved them, but because the person you were could not become the person you needed to be without them. Before those events, there was likely a version of you that was surviving, adapting, and coping, but not fully living. You may have been shaped by expectations, roles, and identities that felt familiar but limiting. You did what worked. You stayed where you were needed. You avoided what felt too risky. You learned how to belong, even if it meant leaving parts of yourself behind. Jung would say that this is how the persona forms. The persona is the identity we build to function in the world, to be accepted, to be safe. But when the persona becomes too tight, too restrictive, the psyche begins to push back. And it does not do this gently. This is where painful life events often enter. A breakup that forces you to confront how much of yourself you abandoned to be loved. A job loss that strips away the identity you built your worth around. A betrayal that exposes how much trust you gave without boundaries. An illness, a burnout, or a sudden collapse that stops you when you refuse to stop yourself. These events feel cruel because they dismantle the structures you relied on. But psychologically, those structures were already cracking. The event didn't create the instability. It revealed it. Many people try to heal by returning to who they were before the pain. Jung would say this is why suffering repeats. The psyche does not want you to go back. It wants you to go forward, but forward into something unknown. This is why the pain feels disorienting. You are not just grieving what happened. You are grieving who you thought you were. After these events, people often say things like, "I don't recognize myself anymore," or "I feel lost," or "nothing makes sense now." From a Jungian perspective, this is not pathology. This is the beginning of individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming who you truly are, not who you were conditioned to be. And it almost always begins with loss. Loss of certainty. Loss of identity. Loss of meaning as you understood it. Take relationships, for example. Many people experience one relationship that devastates them far more than any other. It may not have lasted the longest, but it leaves the deepest mark. That relationship often forces a confrontation with unconscious patterns formed early in life. Patterns of seeking validation, repeating emotional roles, or trying to earn love through sacrifice. The pain of that relationship is not accidental. It exposes what you were unconsciously reenacting. And once seen, that pattern can no longer fully control you. The same is true with career and purpose. Some people build a life that looks successful but feels empty. They ignore the discomfort for years until something collapses. A burnout. A failure. A sudden sense of meaninglessness. This feels like punishment, but psychologically, it is a correction. The psyche refuses to invest energy into a life that is misaligned indefinitely. Jung believed that when the conscious life moves too far away from the inner truth, the unconscious compensates. And compensation often feels like suffering. Another reason these events had to happen is that certain truths cannot be learned intellectually. They must be experienced. You can read about boundaries, self-worth, and authenticity endlessly, but until something hurts enough, the nervous system does not change. Pain forces attention. It slows you down. It breaks denial. It brings unconscious material to the surface. And while that process feels brutal, it is also precise. It targets exactly where growth is being avoided. This is why two people can go through similar events, but only one is transformed by them. The event itself is not the teacher. Your relationship to it is. After the pain, many people try to rush into healing. They want answers quickly. They want closure. But Jung emphasized that meaning emerges over time. Often years later, you look back and realize that the worst moment of your life redirected you towards something more honest. Not necessarily easier. Not necessarily happier in a superficial sense. But truer. There is also a deeper layer that people rarely talk about. Some painful events happen to interrupt unconscious loyalty. Loyalty to family systems, beliefs, or identities that no longer serve you. If you were taught to prioritize others over yourself, pain may force you to choose yourself. If you were taught that love requires suffering, pain may force you to redefine love. If you were taught that stability matters more than truth, pain may force you to risk instability. These events feel personal, but they are often transpersonal. They break patterns that existed long before you were aware of them. Jung believed that what remains unconscious will be experienced as fate. In that sense, painful events are not punishments. They are messages that consciousness has been avoiding. This does not mean you should be grateful for trauma. It means you can extract meaning from it. Meaning does not justify the pain, but it prevents the pain from being wasted. Eventually, if the process is allowed to unfold, something subtle changes. You stop asking why it happened and start noticing who you became because of it. You speak more honestly. You tolerate less. You sense misalignment sooner. You trust yourself more deeply. And perhaps most importantly, you stop needing life to be painless in order to feel safe. Jung believed that wholeness is not the absence of suffering, but the integration of it. The parts of you that were shaped by pain are not broken. They are informed. They carry wisdom that cannot be accessed any other way. Certain life events had to happen to you not because life is cruel, but because your psyche was moving towards something more whole. The pain was not the destination. It was the passage. And if you are still inside that passage, feeling lost, angry, or exhausted, it does not mean you failed. It means the old structure has dissolved, and the new one has not fully formed yet. That space is uncomfortable, but it is also sacred. It is where identity is rewritten. It is where unconscious patterns lose their grip. And it is where a more authentic version of you quietly begins to take shape. One of the most painful scenarios where this becomes visible is the end of a long-term relationship that you believed would last forever. When a marriage ends, or a partnership you built your identity around collapses, the pain often feels disproportionate. It is not only the loss of the person. It is the loss of a future you were already living inside psychologically. Jung would say that the psyche had invested enormous energy into a particular image of life, and when that image dies, the energy has nowhere to go. This creates despair, confusion, and a sense of emptiness. But this collapse often happens because the relationship was holding together a version of you that was no longer true. Perhaps you were shrinking, compromising values, or maintaining harmony at the cost of authenticity. The breakup forces you to confront who you are without that structure, and although it feels like destruction, it is often the first moment you are free to ask what you actually want. Another common scenario is betrayal, especially when it comes from someone you trusted deeply. Being cheated on, lied to, or emotionally replaced can shatter your sense of reality. You replay conversations, search for signs, and question your own judgment. From a Jungian perspective, betrayal often exposes projection. You may have unconsciously projected reliability, safety, or emotional maturity onto someone who did not truly possess it. The pain comes not only from what they did, but from the collapse of the image you built around them. This experience forces you to reclaim those projected qualities and develop them within yourself. Over time, this leads to a more grounded form of trust, one that does not rely on illusion. Career-related breakdowns are another powerful example. Many people follow a path that makes sense logically but feels increasingly empty emotionally. They may be praised, promoted, or financially stable, yet feel disconnected and exhausted. Eventually, something happens. A burnout. A sudden loss of motivation. A layoff. Or a deep sense of meaninglessness that makes it impossible to continue. Jung believed that the psyche will not support a life that is radically misaligned forever. When external success is not matched by inner truth, the unconscious intervenes. This intervention feels like failure, but it is often a redirection. It forces you to confront the question of purpose, not in an abstract way, but in a visceral one. Illness and physical breakdowns also belong here. When the body collapses, it often does so after long periods of psychological neglect. Chronic stress, emotional suppression, and constant self-betrayal accumulate silently. Jung viewed the body as an expression of the psyche. When words and emotions are ignored, the body speaks. Illness forces stillness. It interrupts momentum. It demands attention. And while it can feel unfair, it often arrives at a moment when continuing as before would have caused even deeper damage. Healing, in this case, is not only physical. It requires a reorganization of how you relate to yourself and your limits. Another deeply painful scenario is losing someone you love, especially unexpectedly. Death confronts you with the fragility of meaning itself. It disrupts time, priorities, and assumptions about control. Jung believed that encounters with death often accelerate individuation because they strip away trivial concerns and force existential awareness. Grief changes you because it opens a depth of feeling that cannot be accessed intellectually. It makes you more aware of what matters, what is temporary, and what is essential. While the loss itself cannot be justified, the transformation it initiates is often profound. Some life events hurt because they isolate you. Being excluded, rejected, or misunderstood can reopen very old wounds. For someone who learned early in life that belonging required adaptation, these experiences feel devastating. But psychologically, they often push you toward authenticity. Jung believed that individuation requires separation. You cannot become yourself while constantly trying to fit into spaces that require you to disappear. Rejection, although painful, sometimes removes you from environments that were incompatible with your true nature. There are also moments when life seems to fall apart all at once. Relationships end. Work collapses. Health suffers. Direction disappears. These periods feel overwhelming because multiple identities dissolve simultaneously. Jung would describe this as a total psychic reorganization. The old structures can no longer support growth, so they collapse together. This is often experienced as a dark night of the soul. There is confusion, fear, and a sense of being unmoored. But this state also carries enormous potential. When nothing familiar remains, you are forced to listen inwardly rather than relying on external validation. A particularly confusing scenario is when life becomes painful after you start changing. You set boundaries. You speak honestly. You stop abandoning yourself. And suddenly, relationships strain, opportunities disappear, or conflict arises. This can make you doubt your growth. Jung would say this is a natural consequence of individuation. When you change internally, your external life reorganizes. Not everything can come with you. The pain here is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that alignment has consequences. Even moments of success can hurt. Achieving something you worked toward for years, only to feel empty afterward, can be deeply unsettling. Jung believed that when goals are pursued for unconscious reasons, their fulfillment does not bring satisfaction. This disappointment forces reflection. It pushes you to examine what truly motivates you and whether the life you are building reflects your inner values or compensates for unmet needs. Over time, a pattern becomes visible. The events that hurt the most are often the ones that interrupt unconscious living. They force awareness. They dismantle false certainty. They expose emotional truths that were previously avoided. Jung did not believe that suffering was noble or necessary for its own sake, but he recognized that growth without friction is rare. What changes everything is how you relate to these events afterward. When pain is denied, minimized, or rushed through, it repeats. When it is examined, reflected upon, and integrated, it becomes wisdom. You begin to notice patterns. You recognize your triggers earlier. You make choices with more awareness. Life does not become painless, but it becomes more honest. Eventually, you may realize that the event you once wished had never happened was the moment your life truly began to change. Not because it was good, but because it forced you to stop living unconsciously. Jung believed that consciousness is born from tension. And the tension created by pain, when held rather than avoided, becomes the ground from which a more authentic life emerges. Certain life events had to happen not because they were kind, but because they were precise. They targeted exactly where growth was being resisted. They removed what was no longer viable. And they created space, even if that space felt terrifying at first, for something more aligned to take shape. If you are still inside the pain of such an event, understanding may not yet be accessible. Jung emphasized that meaning often comes later. For now, it is enough to recognize that you are not broken, punished, or lost. You are in transition. And transitions, by their nature, feel unstable before they feel right.
If this message resonated with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more gentle reminders of your inner power.